Hello everybody, I'm just going to make a quick video here to help you do some exploring with GeoGebra. I've got a general question here that I want to start with. How do the measures of the area and perimeter of a rectangle compare? And that'll get a little more specific as I go on, but that's generally what I'm thinking about today. I'm going to do a couple of setting things here just so that I get the pictures look nice. Don't get too crowded here. So first off, on the graphics, I don't really want the axes on when I start. And then I also like to go up to options and labeling, and I don't want everything to be labeled as it comes out, so I'm just going to make sure I have checked new points only. Otherwise you get labels all over the place and it gets pretty messy. So to start, I'm just going to construct a rectangle that I can control in a particular way. So I'm going to just drop a point on the page somewhere, and I'm going to use that as the bottom left-hand corner of my rectangle. And then for this exploration, I want sort of precise control over the length, and I'm going to call it the length and the height today. And so I'm going to do that by inserting a slider. And so I'll put click on the slider tool, click on the page, and I'll call this one length. It's the length of a rectangle, so the minimum is going to be 0. I don't ever want it to be a negative value. And then to start, I'm just going to say the max is 10. You can leave it at 5 for now. You can change it later. So there we've got the length. I've got the slider tool selected. I'm going to click it again, and I'm going to call this the height. And same thing. I don't ever want that to be negative, so I'll say 0 is the minimum. And for now, I'll set the max to be 10. I'll say OK. And now what I want to do is take this length that is on this slider here and translate that down here from point A to the right. And so I'm going to do that by going down into the input bar, and I'm going to just plot a point, and that point is going to have the x coordinate of A, and then I'm going to add to that the length here. So if I look over here, it should say the name of it. So if I type in length, if you look, it's written in that sort of purple color there. That's to tell you that it does recognize that as something in this file. And then I'm going to say comma y of, and it's got to be capital A. And as soon as I did that, before I even hit enter, it plotted that point that looks like about what I want. I'm going to hit enter, and now I've got point B that should be tied to point A. So there's the length of my rectangle. And then I'm going to repeat that same process with the height. And sorry, I can show you that this slider then is connected, and I can change the length of the rectangle by moving the slider. So I'm going to go down to the corner again, the input bar, and I'm going to input x of A, comma y of A, and then I want to add the height to that. And you can see again that point gets plotted, and I'm going to hit enter. And now I've got the 3 of the points that I need. I could do something similar to plot the ordered pair here, but I'm going to try to do it with the other tools just so you get a little bit of variety here. So the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm just going to drop a ray along these axes, or along these to define the length and width of the rectangle. And after I've got that, now I can use the perpendicular tool, and I can click perpendicular line through B and perpendicular through C. And then I can either add a point, or I can add a point at an intersection if I want to be careful. So the intersection between these two lines then should be the last corner for the rectangle that I want. And then I'm going to go in, and I don't really want to see all these lines and rays, so I can just either click over here to hide them. I can also just right click on the page and say, or uncheck show object. And then I'm going to go up, and I'm going to click the Polygon tool, and I'm just going to sort of walk around this rectangle in order, and then make sure you go back and close the original. And now I've got a polygon, in this case a rectangle that I can look at. I can change it. I can change the length of it by moving the slider. And I can change the height of it by moving the other slider. So the question that we asked sort of to start our exploration here is, how do the measures of the area and the perimeter of a rectangle compare? So right now, I don't have the measures of the perimeter and the area. I believe this over here, the poly 1 of 9.83 is the area of this rectangle, but I don't think I have the perimeter anywhere. So I'm going to go up and under the slider tool, under the angle tool here, I should have distance or length. So I can click on that tool. I can just click anywhere on the polygon and it should give me the perimeter. And I don't really like having that text box. I'm going to hit escape. I'm still on the measure distance or length tool. If I hit escape, it takes me back to the arrow tool. I don't really like having this box sort of stuck in here, this text box, so it's in the text, and I should be able to just hide that. But I did get a number over here, perimeter poly 1 equals 16.1, and I could change the length and the width to something a little easier and verify that that is giving me, so this should say 4, so the perimeter is 4. The area is 1 times 1, which is 1. So that looks like it's giving me the perimeter here and the area here. So what I want to do is help my students, help myself sort of be able to see the perimeter and the area maybe a little bit better so that I can see how they're related or if they're related. And so I'm going to start by, I'm going to turn the axes back on. And I'm going to just drop 2 points on the y-axis. Those will end up being E and F. And now what I want to do is similar to what I did here by moving over by the length and by the up by the height. I want to move over from E by the perimeter and by the area. So I'm going to accomplish that, I hope, by moving down here into the input bar, and I'm just going to plot a point that is x of E, so the x coordinate of E, and then I want to add to that perimeter of poly 1. And hopefully when I hit 1, that will turn purple to tell me that GeoGebra recognizes that as an object in this construction. So I'm going to hit comma, and then I want y of E, and that should give me this point over here, which looks good. And I hit enter. I'm going to repeat that same process now. I'm going to say I want x of f, x parentheses, f's got to be capital F, and then I want to add to that poly 1, and that's the area up here, and then I want to have comma y of f, and that should give me another point here. And what I can do now is I can move up here and grab the segment tool, and I can construct a segment for the perimeter and a segment for the area. And then from here, I can do a couple of other things to just sort of help me remember what I'm looking at. If I right-click on this, I can go to Object Properties, and I can give this a caption. So instead of it saying G, I can have it say perimeter. And if I want that to show, I got to move down here to Caption. And then if I leave that open, I believe, and then click on H, I can do the same process here. I want this to be called Area. And I have to switch to caption so that it's displayed as area. And now I have a length that represents the measure of the perimeter, and I have a length that represents the area, or the measure of the area, both of this rectangle. So now I think I'm ready to start doing some exploring and asking myself questions as I start varying or start messing with the length and the height. And what I'm really interested in is saying, let's pick a particular height and then leave it. So let's say, for example, I want to pick a height and I'll just leave it at 1.3. And I'm going to start varying the length. And the question says, in the background, how do the measures of the perimeter and the area relate? Or how do they compare? So right now I would say, well, the perimeter is larger than the area. And I'm going to start moving the length around, and I'm going to sort of observe that comparison and see if that changes. And it looks like the perimeter is always, the measure of the perimeter is always greater than the measure of the area. Until they disappear, then there is no measure of perimeter and area. And the next thing that I want to do then is to say, well, is that always the case? So let's see if I take the height and I move it to be something smaller. I'm going to leave the height at 1/2 or 0.5. Right now, the perimeter is greater than the area, and I want to see if that continues, or how do those two measures compare? Seems that the perimeter is larger, and it seems as though it's going to always be larger until the two disappear. And so I just want to sort of keep doing this process and think about what's happening. And I can zoom out here. If you use your scroll on your computer, you can zoom out if you need a little more space to be able to see the two line segments. It was running off the page there at the end. So it seems like so far we've explored two cases, and in both cases the perimeter of the rectangle was larger than the area, no matter what we did with the length. And so now I'm starting to think, well, is that always the case? Is the perimeter always greater than the area? So I'm going to pick a different height, and I'm going to start moving the length again. And when I start here, the perimeter does seem to be greater, or the measure of the perimeter is greater than the measure of the area. But as I keep that length coming, it sure looks like at some point the area will be greater than the perimeter. And so my question then, or one of my first questions, you can explore all kinds of questions here, but that makes me wonder, well, when is it that I can make the area greater than the perimeter? And I always mean the measure of the area greater than the measure of the perimeter. And I'm also interested in, when are those two equal? Are they ever going to be equal? If it was less, if the area is less than the perimeter here but greater here, seems like might be the case that there's some place where the perimeter and the area are equal. And so I might be interested in trying to find those. But right now I'm just curious about, if I pick a random height and then start moving the length, will it be the case that at some point the area is smaller than the perimeter, and at some case the area is larger than the perimeter? Seems like I can make that happen here, but when we started with the height down at, say, 1, somewhere in that region, it didn't seem like we could get the perimeter to be smaller or get the area to be larger than the perimeter. Hopefully that's enough to get you started on this exploration. I'll probably take this file and post it up on GeoGebra Tube if you want to look for it. That way you don't have to recreate the whole thing. I'd love to hear what you think, and enjoy exploring.